The final bell of the school day rang out like a starter's pistol, and within seconds the halls of Oakwood Elementary were flooded with the sound of children laughing, yelling, stomping sneakers echoing on linoleum floors. Classroom doors swung open as students poured out in waves, backpacks bouncing on their shoulders, eager for freedom. But in the middle of all that noise and movement, one child was still. 8-year-old Emma Vaughn sat slumped on the cold floor, beside locker 117, knees hugged tightly to her chest, her small frame trembling. Her long chestnut hair hung over her face, hiding the tears streaking down her cheeks. Her breathing came in short, quick bursts, shallow and panicked. No one seemed to notice. Teachers called after students, parents waited outside in cars, and the world kept moving. But someone did notice. David Cole, the school janitor, was just finishing up in a nearby hallway, pushing his cart slowly along the edge of the corridor. He wore a faded green uniform shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, a name tag slightly crooked on his chest. He had tired eyes, and a quiet, unassuming demeanor that made him blend into the background. Still, he saw her. He paused, watching the little girl with growing concern. Gently, he parked his cart to the side and walked over, his footsteps soft and measured. He crouched down a few feet away, not too close, his voice warm and steady like the low hum of a lullaby. "Hey there," he said gently, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "Looks like the world's a little too loud right now, huh?" Emma didn't respond. She didn't even look up. Her arms were wrapped so tightly around her knees that her knuckles had gone white. Her small chest rose and fell rapidly, panic rising like a tide. David didn't press her. He didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, he glanced at his janitor's cart and reached into a small side compartment. His hand emerged with something out of place among the cleaning supplies, a small, half-used bottle of bubble solution with a red plastic wand. He held it up in front of her. "Tell you what," he said softly, kneeling beside her at eye level. "Sometimes, when my son used to feel overwhelmed, we'd do something a little silly. Not because it solved the problem, but because it helped him breathe again." With that, he unscrewed the cap, dipped the wand carefully, and blew. A single, shimmering bubble floated into the air, catching the fluorescent lights above and dancing with soft rainbow hues. Then another, and another. The quiet hallway began to glisten with floating orbs of light. They drifted around lockers and over Emma's head like tiny, magical planets. Emma blinked. She raised her head just slightly and followed one with her eyes. Her breathing, still uneven, slowed a little. One hand slowly unwrapped from her knees and reached out toward a bubble that landed on her finger and popped silently. David smiled. "That one looked like a blueberry, didn't it?" he said playfully. "I always tell the bubbles not to pop, but they're a little rebellious." A tiny giggle escaped her lips, barely audible, but real. He dipped the wand again and held it out to her. "Want to try?" She nodded slowly, taking the wand with a trembling hand. Her small fingers closed around it, and she dipped it carefully into the solution. The first few tries didn't work, but David didn't correct her. He just waited. On the third try, a bubble finally emerged from her breath, floating upward like a fragile balloon of peace. She smiled, and for a brief moment, in the middle of a cold gray hallway, full of forgotten textbooks and scratched lockers, something warm and human unfolded, a connection that neither of them could fully explain. Neither of them noticed the tall, elegantly dressed woman standing at the end of the hallway, watching in silence. Her heels clicked once softly as she took a step forward, her sharp jaw clenched in surprise. Her hand held a designer purse, but her eyes, filled with something like disbelief, were locked on her daughter. The woman at the end of the hallway didn't move for a long moment. Isabel Vaughn, founder and CEO of Vaughn Technologies, named one of the most powerful women in business 3 years in a row, stood rooted to the floor, her perfectly tailored navy blazer catching the light from the skylight above. She wasn't used to being unnoticed. People usually fell silent when she entered a room. Assistants scrambled. Investors held their breath. But now, no one saw her. Not even her daughter. She had come to pick Emma up early, after canceling a last-minute investor call. A rare moment of being present, as her assistant had gently urged her to try. She'd expected to find Emma in the front office, maybe drawing or reading. Instead, she'd walked straight into a moment that shattered her assumptions. Her daughter, the girl who'd screamed during therapy, who'd flinched at her own reflection, who had curled up in silence every time Isabel tried to hug her, was smiling, laughing even. And the man next to her, a janitor. Isabel felt a strange mix of emotions bubbling in her chest. At first, something sharp, protective, suspicious. Why was a stranger, a custodian, sitting so close to her daughter? Why had no one called her? But that impulse died as quickly as it came, because Emma looked peaceful. Her cheeks were still, red from crying, but her eyes, those frightened, fragile eyes, were focused on the floating bubbles with a calm Isabel hadn't seen in months. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't panicking. She was breathing, and the man, he wasn't saying much. He wasn't telling her to calm down. He wasn't analyzing her feelings. He was just with her, patient, quiet, present. Isabel stepped back slightly behind a support pillar, not wanting to interrupt. A moment later, her personal assistant, Gina, appeared at her side, phone in hand. "Ma'am, I confirmed your driver is out front. Do you want me to bring Emma?" Or Isabel raised a hand quickly, eyes still on her daughter. "No, not yet." She watched as Emma tried to blow another bubble, her little lips puckered in concentration. The bubble floated toward the janitor's nose and popped. He laughed, and Emma joined him. A lump formed in Isabel's throat. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard her daughter laugh like that. Not since the divorce. Not since the media frenzy. Not since she'd become so busy with lawsuits, launches, and board meetings that Emma became just another name on her packed calendar. She looked down, suddenly ashamed of her own heels, her briefcase, the wall she had built between her and the one person who needed her most. And here, in the school hallway, a man paid to sweep floors was helping her daughter find something no money could buy. Safety. Emma gently handed the bubble wand back to the janitor and wiped her nose with the sleeve of her cardigan. "You're nice," she said. "You don't yell like the others." The janitor chuckled. "Bubbles don't like yelling. I guess I don't either. Do you have a kid?" she asked innocently. He paused. His smile faded slightly, replaced by a distant sadness. "Yeah, I do. A boy. He's older than you now. His mom. She passed away a few years ago. It's just us." Emma looked at him with the kind of empathy only children have. "I don't see my mom much. She's always working. She says it's for me. But," she looked down, "I don't think she knows I cry at night." Isabel's hand gripped the marble column. Her eyes stung. The janitor's voice was quiet. "Maybe she does know, sweetheart. Maybe she just doesn't know how to fix it." Emma nodded slowly. "But you knew how to fix me." He didn't answer. He just smiled and offered her one last bubble. From behind the column, Isabel wiped her eyes and whispered to herself, "No, but maybe he can help fix me too." And the janitor, asterisk. The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of Oakwood Elementary, casting long golden beams across the polished floor. It was just after 8 a.m., and the school was quietly coming to life. Teachers arriving with coffee cups, students filtering in, the low buzz of another school day beginning in the front lobby. David Cole pushed his mop down the hallway in his usual steady rhythm. The wheels of his janitor's cart squeaked slightly, the scent of lemon-scented floor cleaner trailing behind him. He hummed under his breath, a tune he used to sing to his son when he was little. Even in the routine of his job, he carried that warmth with him. Cleaning gave him space to think. And lately, he'd been thinking a lot about a little girl named Emma. He smiled softly at the memory of her laughter as bubbles filled the hallway the day before, but the calm didn't last. A sharp, clear voice rang out behind him. "Excuse me." David turned quickly, startled. Standing in the entryway was the last person he expected, the sharply dressed woman he'd noticed for only a second as she walked away yesterday, the one with the commanding presence and the ice-blue eyes. Isabel Vaughn. David straightened, wiping his hands on his pant leg nervously. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" She stepped toward him with deliberate confidence, her heels tapping on the polished tile like a metronome. She wore a charcoal gray business suit, her dark brown hair pulled back into a sleek knot, a phone in one hand, her purse in the other. "You met my daughter yesterday," she said evenly. "Emma Vaughn." David's stomach clenched. "Oh, yes. I'm sorry if I overstepped." She seemed upset. "I didn't mean to." "You calmed her down," Isabel interrupted, her voice clipped but not unkind. "You were the first person in months who actually reached her, with bubbles." Her tone held a note of disbelief, almost amusement. But there was something else behind it, something like awe, or gratitude, carefully hidden beneath her polished exterior. David gave a humble smile. Sometimes, the simple things matter most. There was a silence between them, not awkward, but loaded. Isabel studied him for a moment, not just his uniform or his job title, but his eyes. Tired, yes, but kind, present, real. She saw no pretense, no agenda, just a man who had soothed her daughter when all the specialists and therapists had failed. "Mr. Cole, is it?" she asked. He nodded. "I've done my research since yesterday," she continued. "You're a single father. Your son, Daniel, is 19. You've worked at this school for 7 years. No complaints, no incidents." David raised an eyebrow, both surprised and impressed. "You really did your research." "I don't take chances with my daughter," she replied, matter-of-factly. David folded his hands awkwardly, unsure of where this was going. Isabel took a deep breath, and then surprised even herself. "I want to offer you a job," she said. David blinked. "A job?" "Yes, as Emma's personal emotional aide, her support person. You won't be a nanny, you won't be a therapist. I want you to be you, the man who made her feel safe enough to smile again." David stared at her. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I clean floors. I'm not trained in, I know exactly what you are," she interrupted gently. "And I also know what you're not. You're not dismissive. You're not clinical. You're not trying to fix her like a broken object. You saw her, you listened." He looked down, trying to process her words. "I can match whatever you're making here and then triple it," she added. "You'd have benefits, paid leave, freedom to set your own hours around her school day, and a real purpose." David looked up at her, emotion flickering behind his eyes. "Every job I've ever taken has been for my son, to keep a roof over our heads, to keep going. But this would be for her, for something bigger than just survival." Isabel nodded slowly. "You won't be working for me, Mr. Cole. You'll be working with me, to help her heal, to help me become the mother she needs. I may be able to give her the world, but you reminded me what she really needs is presence." For a long moment, David said nothing. Then, quietly, he extended his hand. "All right, Ms. Vaughn, for Emma, I'm in." And just like that, in the middle of a school lobby, between a janitor and a billionaire, a pact was made. Not of power, not of money, but of love, trust, and second chances. Asterisk, it had been 3 weeks since David Cole walked through the towering iron gates of the Vaughn estate for the first time. He remembered how out of place he'd felt that morning, his scuffed shoes stepping across marble floors, the quiet of the mansion pressing in from all sides. Everything about the house was sleek, modern, and cold. The silence inside was almost uncomfortable, as if even the walls had forgotten how to laugh. But that silence didn't last long, because in the garden, under a magnolia tree, a small voice had called out, "Mr. David, you brought the bubbles, right?" Now, the Vaughn estate wasn't quiet anymore. Not when Emma was giggling through the garden. Not when David was sitting on the grass, helping her build lopsided castles out of sticks and mud. Not when they danced around the patio trying to catch bubbles that shimmered like melted rainbows in the sun. The estate had begun to feel alive. David had become more than a helper, more than an aide. He was a constant, something Emma could count on in a world that had always moved too fast around her. And Isabel was changing too. She started coming home earlier. At first, she simply observed from her study window, watching her daughter's laughter float through the glass, like a song she hadn't heard in years. She still took calls, still ran a multi-billion-dollar empire. But slowly, she began stepping into the garden more often, heels swapped for flats. Phone left inside. One afternoon, David and Emma sat on the wooden swing at the far end of the yard. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of lavender and fresh grass. Emma was nestled beside David, clutching a small plastic wand in her hand. "Do you think bubbles know where they're going?" she asked, seriously. David chuckled. "No idea. Maybe they don't need to. Maybe they just float and enjoy the ride." She nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Then she leaned her head against his arm. "I'm glad you're here, Mr. David." He looked down at her, this bright, tender soul, who once trembled in hallways, and felt a quiet swell of emotion. "I'm glad too, kiddo," he whispered, "more than you know." From a few feet away, Isabel watched in silence. She held a glass of water in her hand, but had forgotten to drink it. Her eyes weren't sharp like usual. They were soft, reflective. Later that evening, as Emma napped on the couch with her head resting on David's jacket, Isabel came out too. The patio where he sat. The sun had begun to set. It bathed the garden in a deep orange glow, casting long shadows and golden light over the trees. David stood up instinctively, wiping his hands on his jeans. "She wore herself out, chasing that dog," he said with a smile. "She's sleeping, like a rock." Isabel chuckled. "She hasn't done that in months. You've done something no therapist, no specialist, no money could ever do. You gave her back her joy." David shrugged, modest. "I didn't fix her. I just saw her." She turned to him, her voice quieter now. "And you reminded me what I forgot. That presence matters more than perfection." He nodded slowly. "You love her. That's clear. But even the best parents get lost sometimes." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip beneath the horizon. Then Isabel turned to him. "I never believed in fate, Mr. Cole. But the day you blew bubbles in that hallway, maybe the universe was trying to tell me something." He smiled softly. Maybe the universe just knew Emma needed someone to remind her how to breathe. She stepped a little closer, folding her arms as the breeze picked up. "Do you think you'd stay? I mean long term, be part of her life, of ours." David looked at her, this woman who had once seemed untouchable, now standing vulnerably in front of him. He thought of his own son, off at college now, and how quickly life changes. He didn't hesitate. "I already am." And in that moment, under the soft glow of the setting sun, in a garden once silenced by absence, something profound settled between them. Not a contract, not a salary, but a bond, the kind that forms not through blood, but through love, freely given.